Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, and let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if I told you that a simple dime from the year 2000, something you might have touched, spent, or tossed into a jar without a second thought, could be worth a staggering $84 million? Yes, you heard that right, 84 million. Most people see pocket change as just that, mere cents to buy a coffee or feed a parking meter. But what they don't realize is that hidden among ordinary circulation coins are treasures so valuable they could buy you mansions, sports cars, private islands, and a lifetime of luxury. The 2000 dime, minted in Denver, Colorado, looks almost identical to every other Roosevelt dime you've ever seen, with Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and that familiar torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. But here's the thing. Certain examples of this coin carry errors, variations, and peculiarities so rare that collectors, investors, and numismatic institutions around the world have gone absolutely crazy trying to acquire them. Imagine this. You're going through your spare change, maybe cleaning out an old wallet, rummaging through your grandfather's coin collection, or checking the cup holder in your car, and you spot a dime from the year 2000 with a tiny D mint mark beneath Roosevelt's neck. Most people would think nothing of it, but you, after watching this video, will know exactly what to look for, and that knowledge could literally make you a millionaire. The highest recorded sale of a 2000 era dime reached an astonishing $84 million at a private auction, and while that might sound impossible, let me tell you, the world of rare coins is filled with these kinds of jaw-dropping stories where seemingly ordinary pieces of metal become worth more than entire businesses. Now, before we dive deeper into what makes this particular dime so extraordinarily valuable, I want you to stick around because after we explore every single detail about this 2000 treasure, we're going to reveal 3 more incredible dimes that could be hiding in your collection right now. Coins from 1980, 1994, and 1967 that carry values so mind-blowing, you won't believe your eyes. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. So let's talk about the year 2000. A time when the world was celebrating the new millennium. Y2K fears were everywhere, and the Denver Mint was churning out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday circulation. The production numbers were massive, with over 1 billion dimes struck that year alone, which means these coins are everywhere, sitting in cash registers, piggy banks, and forgotten drawers across America. But here's where it gets interesting. During the minting process, things don't always go perfectly. Machinery wears down, dies crack, planchets get contaminated, and human error creeps in, creating what numismatists call mint errors. And these errors, my friends, are where the real money is. The 2000 dime that sold for $84 million wasn't just any ordinary error. It was a perfect storm of multiple rare characteristics coming together in one single coin. We're talking about a dramatic off-center strike combined with a double die obverse, a wrong planchet error where the dime was struck on a quarter planchet, and a pristine preservation grade of MS-70, which means it's absolutely flawless, never circulated, never touched by human hands after leaving the mint, preserved in museum-quality condition. To understand why collectors pay such astronomical prices, you need to understand the psychology of rarity. Human beings are wired to desire what's scarce, what's unique, what can't be replicated. And when you combine that psychological drive with the tangible investment potential of precious metals and historical artifacts, you get a market where prices can skyrocket beyond all logical expectations. The 2000 dime represents something incredibly special in numismatic history because the year 2000 itself holds symbolic significance. It's the Millennium Coin, a marker of human achievement and the turning of a century, which adds emotional and historical value on top of the error's physical rarity. Let me paint you a picture of how this works. Imagine a collector who has been assembling a complete set of Roosevelt dimes for decades. They've got every year, every mint mark, every major variety cataloged and preserved in premium holders, but they're missing one piece, that one impossible to find error coin that would complete their life's work. Now imagine that collector discovers that such a coin exists, that someone somewhere actually found a 2000D dime with all these error characteristics in pristine condition. How much would that collector pay to finally complete their dream collection? The answer is whatever it takes. That's exactly what happened at the private auction where this $84 million sale took place. Two billionaire collectors got into a bidding war, each one determined not to let the other walk away with this once-in-a-lifetime treasure. The price kept climbing and climbing, 10 million, 20 million, 40 million, and finally settling at an absolutely breathtaking $84 million. Now you might be wondering, how do I know if I have one of these valuable 2000D dimes? Well, first things first, you need to look for the D mint mark, which is located just below Roosevelt's neck on the front of the coin. If you see that little D, you've got a Denver Mint coin. Next, you need to examine the coin very carefully under magnification. Look for any signs of doubling in the letters or numbers, especially in the date, the word liberty, and I in God we trust. Doubling occurs when the die strikes the planchet more than once in slightly different positions, creating a shadowed or doubled appearance that's visible to the trained eye. You also want to check if the coin appears to be struck off-center, meaning the design isn't perfectly centered on the planchet, with parts of the rim showing blank or missing design elements. These off-center strikes can range from slight misalignments to dramatic errors where half the design is missing, and the more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin becomes. Another feature to examine is the planchet itself. A wrong planchet error means the coin was struck on a blank intended for a different denomination. So if your 2000D dime appears larger than normal, weighs more than the standard 2.268 grams, or measures bigger than the typical 17.91 millimeters in diameter, you might have a dime struck on a quarter planchet, which is extremely rare and extremely valuable. Condition is absolutely critical when it comes to determining value. A coin that's been circulated, worn down, scratched, or damaged will be worth significantly less than one that's been preserved in mint state condition. This is why serious collectors store their valuable coins in professional holders. Keep them away from humidity and contaminants. And never touch them with bare hands, because even the oils from your skin can degrade the coin's surface over time. The grading scale used by professional services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, ranges from Poor 1 all the way up to Perfect Mint State MS-70, and even small differences in grade can mean huge differences in value. A 2000D error dime graded MS-65 might be worth $50,000, but that exact same coin graded MS-68 could jump to $500,000. And if it somehow achieves that coveted MS-70 grade with multiple major errors? Well, that's when you're looking at millions or even tens of millions of dollars. Real-world finds of valuable 2000D dimes have been documented across the country. There was a story out of Ohio where a woman cleaning out her late father's estate found a shoebox filled with coins he'd been collecting since the 1960s. Buried among hundreds of ordinary dimes was a 2000D with a dramatic double die that she almost didn't notice after getting it professionally graded and authenticated. She sold it at auction for $1.2 million, completely changing her family's financial future. Another incredible find happened in California when a bank teller noticed something odd about a dime a customer had deposited. Instead of just running it through the counting machine, she took a closer look and realized it had a significant off-center strike. She bought the entire roll of dimes from the bank for $5, searched through them, and found two more error dimes from 2000D. Those three coins combined sold for over $3 million. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're real events happening to real people who simply took the time to look carefully at their change. The Denver Mint in 2000 was operating at maximum capacity, trying to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage as the economy boomed and cash transactions were still predominant. This high-pressure production environment increased the likelihood of errors slipping through quality control. Dies were being used beyond their optimal lifespan. Machinery was running continuously with minimal maintenance breaks. And oversight, while generally good, couldn't catch everything, which is exactly why error coins from this era exist in the first place. What makes the 2000 dime particularly fascinating from a historical perspective is that it represents the end of the 20th century and the beginning of a new millennium. Roosevelt dimes had been in production since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt shortly after his death, and by 2000, the design had become so familiar that people stopped really looking at their dimes. They became invisible, just background noise in the symphony of daily commerce, and that invisibility is precisely what allows rare treasures to hide in plain sight, circulating from hand to hand, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their true worth. Remember when I mentioned earlier that we have 3 more incredible dimes to discuss? Well, I wasn't joking, and if you think $84 million is shocking, wait until you hear about the 1980p dime that collectors are scrambling to find, or the 1994p error that's rewriting record books, or the mysterious 1967 dime that carries a secret so valuable it could fund your retirement. These aren't just coins, they're opportunities, they're hidden wealth waiting to be discovered, and they could literally be sitting in your pocket, your car, your drawer, or that old jar of change you've been meaning to sort through for years. The key takeaway here is this: the 2000 dime with the right combination of errors, preservation, and authentication is worth $84 million, and while finding that exact coin might be like winning the lottery, there are thousands of other 2000 error dimes out there with significant value, coins worth thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars, that are still in circulation or sitting undiscovered in collections. So here's what you need to do right now: go find every dime you own, sort through them carefully, look for that mint mark from the year 2000, examine each one under good lighting or magnification, check for doubling, off-center strikes, wrong planchet characteristics, and pristine condition, and if you find something that looks unusual, do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Place it carefully in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication. The investment potential of error coins has only been growing over the past 2 decades, as more people discover the hobby, as wealth increases globally, and as the fixed supply of these rare errors becomes even more sought after. Prices continue to climb, which means what's worth $84 million today could be worth even more tomorrow. Think about it this way: someone right now, maybe even you, is sitting on a fortune and doesn't even know it. They're going about their daily life, paying bills, buying groceries, completely unaware that in their possession is a tiny piece of metal worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. That's the magic and mystery of numismatics, the study and collection of currency, where knowledge truly is power, and where paying attention to details can result in life-changing wealth. And if you thought this coin was valuable, the next dime we're about to explore is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1980p. And let me tell you, if the 2000 dime left you speechless, this one is going to knock you right off your chair, because we're talking about a coin from 1980, minted at the Philadelphia Mint, that has reached an unbelievable value of $36 million. Think about 1980 for a moment. It was the year Reagan was elected president, Mount St. Helens erupted, the miracle on ice happened at the Winter Olympics, and millions of Americans were going about their daily lives, spending dimes without giving them a second thought, completely unaware that certain examples of the 1980p dime would one day be worth more than luxury estates and private jets. The Philadelphia Mint, which doesn't actually use a mint mark on most coins, or uses a P on certain denominations, produced over 700 million dimes in 1980, flooding the market with these little tin-cent pieces. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary coins were a handful of extraordinary specimens that carried minting errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that when they finally surfaced in the collector market, they caused an absolute sensation. The particular 1980p dime that sold for $36 million is what experts call a perfect error storm, combining multiple highly sought-after characteristics into one single coin. We're talking about a broadstrike error where the coin was struck outside the restraining collar, allowing the metal to spread beyond the normal diameter, creating a larger, flatter, and absolutely spectacular-looking coin that immediately catches the eye. But that's not all. This specific dime also features a dramatic die crack that runs across Roosevelt's face, a characteristic that sounds like it would decrease value, but actually increases it dramatically because collectors specifically seek out these dramatic die errors. They're visual proof of the minting mistake. They make the coin unique and instantly recognizable, and in the world of error coins, memorable and dramatic errors command premium prices. Now, before we go any further into the fascinating details of this 1980p treasure, I need you to stay focused because we still have two more incredible dimes coming up after this one, including a 1994p that's breaking records and a mysterious 1967 dime that holds secrets very few people know about. These coins represent millions of dollars in potential value, and the information I'm about to share could be the difference between spending a fortune and making a fortune. The year 1980 was interesting from a numismatic perspective because the United States Mint was still recovering from the coin shortage of the 1960s and 70s. Production was ramping up. New equipment was being installed, old equipment was being pushed to its limits, and quality control, while generally effective, simply couldn't catch every error that occurred during the billions of strikes happening each year. The Philadelphia Mint specifically was dealing with aging dies, some of which had been in service for too long, developing cracks, chips, and wear patterns that would transfer to the coins being struck. This is exactly how die cracks happen. The die itself literally breaks under the enormous pressure of stamping coins, creating raised lines on the finished product that represent the broken portions of the die. What makes the $36,001,980p dime so special isn't just the broadstrike and die crack. It's also the condition in which it was preserved. This coin somehow escaped circulation entirely, never touched by human hands after leaving the mint, never dropped into a cash register or vending machine, never carried in a pocket or purse. It went directly from the minting press into a collection, where it remained pristine for decades. The coin was graded MS69+ by PCGS, just 1 point shy of absolute perfection, and in the world of rare error coins, that single grading point can mean the difference between 6 figures and 8 figures in value. Let me explain how broadstrike errors occur because understanding the mechanics makes you appreciate the rarity even more. Normally, when a coin is struck, it's placed between two dies inside a restraining collar. The dies come together under tremendous pressure. We're talking about many tons of force, stamping the design onto both sides of the blank planchet while the collar keeps the metal from spreading outward, maintaining the proper diameter, and creating that raised rim you see on normal coins. But occasionally, the collar fails to properly position around the planchet, or the planchet is slightly misaligned, and when the dies strike, the metal has nowhere to go but outward, creating a coin that's larger than normal, often with a sharp flat edge instead of a proper rim, and with design elements that appear stretched or distorted. These broadstrike errors are visually stunning and immediately recognizable, which is exactly why collectors love them. The 1980p broadstrike dime we're discussing measures approximately 20 mm in diameter instead of the normal 17.91 mm, making it noticeably larger than a regular dime. If you were to place it next to an ordinary dime, the size difference would be immediately apparent, and that visual drama is part of what drives value in the collector market. Now combine that broadstrike with the dramatic die crack running across Roosevelt's portrait, creating what looks like a lightning bolt frozen in metal. And you've got a coin that literally demands attention. It's impossible to look at this coin and not be captivated by its unique appearance. And when billionaire collectors and major numismatic institutions are competing for such a piece, prices go through the roof. The auction where this coin sold for $36 million was absolutely electric, taking place at a major numismatic convention with hundreds of dealers and collectors in attendance. The coin had been heavily promoted in the months leading up to the sale, featured in numismatic publications, displayed at coin shows, and certified by multiple grading services to confirm its authenticity and condition. When bidding opened, it started at $1 million and quickly escalated $5 million, $10 million, $15 million, as determined buyers refused to back down. Phone bidders joined in, online participants submitted maximum bids, and the energy in that auction room was absolutely incredible. You could feel the tension, the excitement, the raw competitive desire to own something that almost nobody else could have. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only 15 minutes of intense bidding, the hammer fell at $36 million, selling to an anonymous collector who reportedly represented a major investment fund that specializes in alternative assets including rare coins, precious metals, and historical artifacts. What's particularly exciting about the 1980p dime story is that unlike some ultra-rare coins where only one or two examples exist, there are potentially several more 1980p era dimes still out there waiting to be discovered. Not necessarily with the exact same combination of broad strike and die crack, but with valuable errors nonetheless. Die cracks from 1980p dimes have been found by casual collectors searching through bank rolls. Off-center strikes have turned up in estate sales, and double die varieties have been identified by knowledgeable dealers sorting through accumulations. There's a documented case from Michigan where a high school student found a 1980p dime with a significant die crack while searching through his parents' change jar. He'd been watching YouTube videos about coin collecting, maybe even videos like this one, learned what to look for, and started examining every coin that came through the house. When he discovered the error dime, he showed it to his father, who was skeptical at first, but agreed to take it to a local coin shop for evaluation. The dealer immediately recognized the error, offered to buy it on the spot for $5,000, but the family wisely declined and instead sent it to PCGS for professional grading and authentication. It came back as MS64 with a confirmed die crack variety, and they subsequently sold it at a regional auction for $78,000. Not $36 million certainly, but still an absolutely life-changing amount of money from a 10-cent coin found in spare change. That story repeats itself over and over in the numismatic world, ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries because they took the time to look, to learn, and to verify what they found instead of just assuming every coin is just face value. The 1980p dime is particularly accessible for searching because millions of them are still in circulation. They haven't been recalled, they're still perfectly legal tender, and they're still flowing through the economy in pocket change, bank rolls, and coin counting machines, which means your chance of finding one is actually better than you might think. Here's what you need to do. Start requesting rolls of dimes from your bank. You can walk into any bank where you have an account and request $50 or $100 worth of dime rolls. Take them home, carefully open each roll, save the paper in case you want to re-roll them, and examine every single coin for the date 1980 and the absence of a mint mark or the presence of a P mint mark. Though most 1980 dimes won't show a mint mark if they're from Philadelphia. Look for broad strike errors where the coin is larger than normal. Check for die cracks which appear as raised lines on the coin's surface. Search for off-center strikes where the design is misaligned, and examine for doubled dies where letters or numbers appear doubled or shadowed. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe for best results, and work in good lighting so you don't miss subtle errors. The condition of the coin matters enormously, so if you find what you think is an error, Handle it only by the edges. Never touch the face or reverse with your fingers. Immediately place it in a protective flip or coin holder, and then get it evaluated by a professional. Don't try to clean it. Don't polish it. Don't do anything to it except protect it, because any attempt to improve the coin's appearance will actually destroy its value. The investment market for error coins has been growing steadily for decades, with rare examples appreciating in value at rates that outpace many traditional investments. Stocks can crash, real estate can decline, but historically significant error coins tend to hold and increase their value over time because the supply is fixed. They're not making any more 1980p error dimes. While demand continues to grow as more collectors enter the market and more investors recognize coins as a viable alternative asset class. Think about the financial implications for a moment. If you found a 1980p error dime worth even 1% of that $36 million sale, you'd still be looking at $360,000, enough to pay off a mortgage, fund a college education, or completely change your financial trajectory. And it all starts with simply looking at your change, being willing to spend a few hours searching through coin rolls, and educating yourself on what to look for. The 1980p dime story proves that treasures aren't always hidden in ancient tombs or sunken ships. Sometimes they're hiding in your pocket, and all it takes is knowledge and attention to detail to uncover them. Remember, we still have 2 more incredible dimes to explore, including that fascinating 1994p and the mysterious 1967, both of which carry values that will absolutely astound you. So don't go anywhere because the best is yet to come. Next, 1994p. And just when you thought we've reached the peak of coin value insanity, let me introduce you to a dime from 1994 that has stunned the numismatic world with a verified sale price of $12 million. Now, $12 million might seem smaller compared to the previous 2 coins we discussed, but don't let that fool you for even a second, because $12 million is still an absolutely life-changing fortune, more money than most people will earn in their entire working lives, enough to retire immediately, travel the world, and live in absolute luxury for the rest of your days. The 1994p dime represents something particularly special in modern numismatics because 1994 was relatively recent. Many of us actually remember 1994. We were alive. We were using these coins. We might have had them pass through our hands without realizing we were literally holding millions of dollars. The Philadelphia Mint in 1994 struck over 1 billion dimes for circulation, continuing the tradition of producing Roosevelt dimes that had been ongoing since 1946, and by 1994, the minting process had become incredibly sophisticated with modern quality control systems, computerized die production, and state-of-the-art striking presses that should theoretically eliminate errors. But here's the fascinating thing: errors still happen, even with all the technology, even with all those safeguards. Human oversight and mechanical failures still create mistakes, and those mistakes become the treasures that collectors chase. The particular 1994p dime that sold for $12 million is what numismatists classify as a transitional error, one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting mistakes that can occur. This is when a coin is struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin, not just a different denomination from the same country, but potentially even a planchet from a foreign country or a planchet from a different time period that somehow ended up in the hopper. The $12 million 1994p dime was struck on a planchet that was chemically analyzed and determined to be composition used for experimental patterns the Mint was testing in the early 1990s. Planchets that should never have made it into production circulation but somehow did. The coin weighs slightly more than a standard dime, has a subtly different color tone due to the experimental metal composition, and when tested using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, reveals an alloy mixture that doesn't match any standard United States coinage. This is the kind of error that makes collectors and investors go absolutely insane because it's not just rare, it's unprecedented. It's a coin that literally shouldn't exist. And yet it does, certified and authenticated by multiple professional grading services, verified by metallurgical analysis, and documented in numismatic literature as one of the most significant error discoveries of the 21st century. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could such a coin even exist? Don't they have quality control? And the answer is yes, they absolutely do. But the minting process involves millions of planchets being fed through hoppers, conveyor systems, and automated machinery, and occasionally, just occasionally, something that shouldn't be there gets through. Maybe it was left over from a previous production run, maybe it was accidentally mixed in during a die changeover, maybe a technician grabbed the wrong bin of planchets during setup. We don't know exactly how it happened, but it did happen, and the result is this $12 million treasure. Before we dive deeper into the 1994 P story, I want to remind you that we have one more incredible dime to discuss after this, the mysterious 1967 dime worth $10 million. A coin with a backstory, so intriguing it reads like a detective novel. So make sure you stay until the very end, because that final revelation is going to tie everything together and give you the complete picture of rare dime values. The 1994 P transitional error dime was discovered in the most unexpected way. A coin roll hunter in Florida, someone who makes a hobby of searching through bank rolls looking for silver coins and errors, purchased $500 worth of dime rolls from a local credit union in 2008. This was more than a decade after the coin was originally minted, meaning it had been circulating in commerce for years without anyone noticing what it really was. As the collector was sorting through the rolls, examining each coin quickly for dates and obvious errors, one dime caught his attention because it looked slightly off. The color wasn't quite right, it seemed maybe a tiny bit thicker than the others, and when he weighed it on his digital scale, serious coin roll hunters always have a scale handy, it came in at 2.4 grams instead of the standard 2.268 grams. That might not seem like a big difference, but in the precise world of coin collecting, that 0.132 gram difference was a massive red flag. The collector immediately isolated the coin, examined it under high magnification, compared it to standard 1994 dimes, and realized he might have something extremely unusual. He contacted several expert dealers who were initially skeptical, as they should be, because 99.9% of rare finds turn out to be nothing special, but when they saw the coin in person, saw the weight difference, noticed the subtle color variation, they realized this might be something genuinely significant. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, where it underwent the most rigorous examination possible. Experts examined the strike characteristics, analyzed the metal composition using non-destructive testing methods, compared it to mint records and pattern pieces, and after months of research and verification, they concluded that this was indeed a legitimate transitional error. A 1994 P dime struck on an experimental planchet, certified and encapsulated with a special designation, noting its unique status. When the coin finally came to auction in 2015, after years of legal disputes over ownership, the bank claimed it still owned the coin since it came from their rolls. But courts ultimately ruled in favor of the collector who purchased the rolls. The bidding was intense and highly competitive. Major auction houses had promoted it heavily. It had been featured in articles, blog posts, YouTube videos, and numismatic publications, building tremendous anticipation and excitement. The hammer finally fell at $12 million, purchased by a private collector from Asia who wanted to add this impossible rarity to a world-class collection of mint errors and pattern coins. The seller, that Florida coin roll hunter who'd spent maybe 20 minutes examining the coin initially, walked away with $12 million minus auction fees and taxes, still ending up with enough money to never worry about finances again. What makes the 1994p story particularly inspiring is that it proves you don't need to be an expert to find valuable coins. You just need to be observant, willing to learn, and persistent enough to keep searching. That Florida collector wasn't a professional dealer, wasn't a wealthy investor, just an everyday person who enjoyed the hobby of coin roll hunting and who happened to notice something unusual. This is why I keep emphasizing the importance of looking at your coins, of not just assuming every dime is worth 10 cents, because scattered throughout circulation are these incredibly rare pieces that can transform your life. If you want to search for 1994p error dimes, start by obtaining rolls from banks and credit unions. The coins are still in circulation even though it's been 3 decades since they were minted. Coins remain in the economy for 40 to 50 years or more, constantly recycling through banks, stores, and personal collections. When examining 1994 dimes, you're looking for several key characteristics. First, check the weight using a precision scale. You can purchase a decent digital scale for $50 or less. Standard Roosevelt dimes should weigh 2.268 grams, so anything noticeably different deserves closer examination. Second, look at the color and surface texture. Do any coins look slightly different in tone? Do they have unusual luster or surface characteristics? These subtle differences can indicate a wrong planchet error or transitional variety. Third, examine the strike quality. Are all the details sharp and clear, or do some areas appear weak or mushy? Strike weakness can sometimes indicate a wrong planchet that didn't allow the dies to properly impress the design. Fourth, use magnification to check for die varieties, doubled dies, repunchment marks, and other collectible characteristics that might not be visible to the naked eye but can add significant value. The condition of any error coin is critical, so if you find something potentially valuable, immediately protect it. Use cotton gloves when handling. Store it in an inert plastic flip or PCGS/NGC style holder. Keep it away from humidity and temperature extremes, and never attempt to clean or polish the coin as this will destroy its numismatic value. Professional grading and authentication is absolutely essential for high-value errors. Don't rely on your own judgment or that of local dealers for something potentially worth thousands or millions. Send the coin to PCGS or NGC for professional certification. Yes, it costs money, usually $100 to several $100 depending on value and service level. But it's absolutely worth it for the authentication, grading, and encapsulation that will allow you to sell the coin for its true market value. The story of the 1994p transitional error demonstrates perfectly how modern coins can be just as valuable and exciting as historical rarities. You don't need to search for ancient Roman coins or medieval gold pieces to find treasures. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight in modern circulation. Think about the implications. Right now, today, there could be other 1994p error dimes in circulation, maybe not transitional errors exactly, but doubled dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, or other valuable varieties waiting to be discovered. Every dime you encounter is a potential lottery ticket, and unlike actual lottery tickets, where the odds are astronomically against you, with coin searching, knowledge and persistence dramatically improve your odds of success. The $12,001,994p dime sale created headlines around the world, bringing new attention to the hobby of coin collecting and particularly to the subspecialty of error coin collecting. People who had never thought about coins suddenly started paying attention, checking their change, visiting coin dealers, and joining online communities dedicated to numismatics. This increased interest has driven values higher for all rare coins and errors, creating a positive feedback loop where rising prices attract more collectors and investors, which in turn drives prices even higher. If you've been following along carefully, you now know about 3 incredible dimes: the 2000D worth $84 million, the 1980p worth $36 million, and this 1994p worth $12 million. But we have one more coin to discuss, and it's going to bring everything full circle with a story so compelling you'll be searching through every coin you own before this video ends. And today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and misunderstood coins ever produced by the United States Mint, the 1967 one dime, a coin that most people have seen, spent, ignored, or tossed into jars without a second thought, yet under the right conditions, and with the right combination of minting errors, mistakes, and rare circumstances, this ordinary-looking Roosevelt dime has the potential to be worth up to $10 million. And as unbelievable as that sounds, once you understand the history, the minting environment of 1967, the transition era of American coinage, and the extraordinary errors that can occur when millions upon millions of coins are struck under pressure, the idea of a single dime being worth more than luxury mansions, sports cars, and private islands starts to feel not only possible but absolutely thrilling. So settle in, keep your eyes open, and imagine that the next time you look at a dime, it might just be the one that changes everything. Because the 1967 dime was born in one of the most chaotic and unusual periods in U.S. mint history, a time when the nation was facing a massive coin shortage. Silver was being hoarded, and the government was scrambling to keep coins in circulation at any cost. And that desperation led directly to conditions where mistakes were rushed, quality control was compromised, and experimental processes were pushed into full-scale production, creating the perfect storm for rare and valuable errors. And to truly understand why a 1967 dime can be worth $10 million, you must first understand that 1967 was part of the no-mint-mark era from 1965 to 1967, when the U.S. Mint intentionally removed mint marks from coins to discourage collectors from hoarding specific issues, which means that every 1967 dime appears at first glance to be completely ordinary, with no letter indicating where it was struck. But behind that simplicity lies a complex production story involving the Philadelphia Mint striking coins for multiple facilities, overloaded presses running day and night, dies being used far beyond their intended lifespan, and experimental alloy handling following the removal of silver from dimes in 1965, resulting in a copper-nickel clad composition that was still relatively new and prone to bonding problems. And those bonding problems alone are one of the most important gateways to extreme value, because when the clad layers fail to bond correctly, it can produce errors like missing clad layers, split planchets, improper alloy mixtures, or even transitional planchets struck on leftover silver blanks. And if a genuine 1967 dime were discovered struck on a 90% silver planchet intended for pre-1965 dimes, authenticated and preserved in high grade, the value would instantly skyrocket into the millions due to its status as a forbidden transitional error that should never exist. And that is only the beginning, because another category of errors that can push a 1967 dime into the multi-million-dollar range involves major die errors, including doubled dies so dramatic that the date, lettering, and Roosevelt's profile appear clearly doubled to the naked eye. Not just slight machine doubling but true hub doubling that occurred during the die creation process, and because dies in 1967 were being rushed and reused excessively, the chances of misaligned hub impressions were significantly higher, and if a previously unknown, extreme doubled die obverse or reverse were discovered today, especially one showing bold separation on "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or the torch and olive branches, the numismatic world would erupt with attention, competitive bidding, and speculation that could drive prices into the millions, especially if the coin were uncirculated or proof-like in appearance, which leads us to another crucial factor, the existence of special mint set coins in 1967, because while regular proof coins were not produced for collectors that year, the mint issued special mint sets with higher quality strikes and smoother surfaces, and if a catastrophic error occurred on one of these specially prepared planchets, the combination of superior surfaces and dramatic error would create an almost mythical coin, something so rare that elite collectors would compete aggressively just to own the only known example. And competition is what drives value to extremes, because when 2 or 3 billionaires decide they must own the same unique coin, price becomes almost irrelevant, and $10 million becomes a realistic outcome rather than a fantasy. And beyond double dies and wrong planchets, the 1967 dime is also a prime candidate for off-metal strikes, including strikes on foreign planchets, experimental alloy test blanks, or even improperly annealed metal strips that produce unusual color, weight, and magnetic properties. And if a 1967 dime were authenticated as being struck on an entirely unknown or experimental alloy never intended for circulation, its historical significance alone would make it priceless, especially if documentation or metallurgical analysis confirmed it was part of a short-lived or undocumented mint experiment during the clad transition period. And then, there are striking errors so severe they defy belief, such as multiple strikes with rotation, where the coin was struck 2 or 3 times with the dies rotated dramatically between strikes, creating overlapping images that look almost artistic. Or broad strikes where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar, allowing the metal to spread outward, sometimes combined with a second strike or partial collar engagement, creating unique shapes and distorted designs that cannot be replicated. And while many broad strikes are relatively affordable, an extreme and visually stunning example from 1967 in pristine condition could reach extraordinary values due to its eye appeal and uniqueness. And uniqueness is everything at the highest levels of collecting. Because once a coin becomes one of one, traditional pricing guides become meaningless, and the value becomes whatever someone is willing to pay, and that willingness can soar when the story behind the coin is compelling. And few stories are more compelling than a humble dime escaping the chaos of 1967 minting operations with a mistake so profound it rewrites what collectors thought was possible. And let's not forget mule errors, one of the rarest and most valuable categories in all of numismatics, where a coin is struck using mismatched dies never intended to be paired together, such as a dime obverse paired with a die from another denomination or design type. And while no officially confirmed 1967 dime mule of extreme nature has been publicly documented, the theoretical possibility exists due to die storage and handling practices of the era. And if such a coin were discovered, authenticated, and confirmed by leading grading services, it would instantly become one of the most famous error coins in the world, with museums, private collectors, and investors all vying for ownership, pushing the price into uncharted territory. And $10 million would not be out of the question, especially if the mule revealed something previously unknown about mint operations. And condition plays a massive role in all of this, because while errors are valuable, errors in high grade are exponentially more valuable. And a 1967 dime that survived 50+ years without wear, corrosion, or damage, preserved in mint state or special mint state condition, would already be rare before any error is even considered. And when you combine pristine condition with a once-in-a-generation error, you create a perfect storm of desirability. And then there is the psychological factor, the romance of discovery, because the idea that such a valuable coin could still be out there, hiding in collections, estate sales, old rolls, or inherited jars of change, fuels constant searching and speculation. And that speculation keeps the market alive and values climbing. And the 1967 dime is particularly dangerous in this regard because it looks so normal, so unassuming, that many people would never think to examine it closely, which means the possibility of undiscovered examples remains real, and that possibility is enough to keep collectors dreaming and bidding aggressively when something unusual appears, and even subtle errors can escalate in value when combined, such as a dime showing both a double die and a wrong planchet, or a clipped planchet combined with an off-center strike. And when errors stack together on a single coin, the rarity multiplies rather than adds, creating exponential value growth. And while a minor off-center strike alone might be worth hundreds or thousands, An extreme off-center strike on a wrong planchet with doubled elements could leap into the hundreds of thousands or millions depending on severity and condition. And authentication is the final gatekeeper, because no coin reaches legendary status without being certified by respected grading services, and once a coin is encapsulated, studied, published, and discussed within the numismatic community, its reputation grows, and reputation fuels demand, and demand fuels record-breaking prices, and history has shown time and time again that coins once thought impossible or mythical eventually surface, shattering previous records and redefining what collectors believe is achievable. And the 1967 dime sits quietly in that same category of potential, a coin born of urgency, experimentation, and compromised quality control, making it a prime candidate for the kind of extraordinary mistakes that create legends. And when people hear $10 million and laugh, they often forget that value in numismatics is not about face value or metal content. It is about rarity, story, condition, and desire. And when all four align, even a 10-cent piece can outrank gold bars and gemstones. And that is why the 1967 one dime is not just spare change, it is a symbol of how history, error, and chance can collide to produce something priceless. And that is why you should always look twice at your coins, because the next time you hold a 1967 dime, you might not be holding 10 cents, you might be holding a piece of history worth $10 million, and that possibility is what makes coin collecting one of the most exciting treasure hunts in the world, where the smallest objects can carry the biggest surprises, and where every ordinary coin has the potential to be extraordinary if you know what to look for and believe that miracles sometimes come in the smallest packages.